chosen one, before you read another word, before you scroll to anything else today, I need you to hear this clearly. You are not here by accident. Something drew you to this exact video, on this exact day, at this exact hour, and it was not random chance. It was not an algorithm working alone. There is a hand behind the timing of your life that is far more precise than you have ever given it credit for, and that same hand has led you here because there is something you need to hear before the sun goes down today. You finally won. Say that to yourself again, slowly, because I do not think you have fully let it land yet. You finally won. Not you are about to win. Not you might win if you keep trying a little longer. You finally won. Somewhere in the unseen realm, in the courtroom of heaven, where the real verdicts are handed down long before they show up in your circumstances, the case has already closed in your favor. The struggle you have been carrying, the one that has kept you up at night, the one that has made you question whether God even remembers your name, that struggle has already been decided. You are the one who is walking away with the blessing. But here is the part that so many people miss, and it is the very reason you were led to this message today. Winning is not the finish line. Winning is the beginning of a new kind of danger, because the moment right after a victory is often the moment we are most vulnerable, most tempted to let other people in too quickly, most tempted to explain, to prove, to celebrate loudly in rooms full of people who were never meant to witness the sacred and fragile work that is still happening inside you. That is why I am telling you plainly, chosen one, do not be around anyone this Sunday. I know how strange that sounds coming from a message that is supposed to be about hope and encouragement. You would expect me to tell you to call your family, to gather your friends, to throw open the doors and let everyone see how far you have come. But there are moments in the life of a person who has just crossed over from struggle into breakthrough where the wisest, holiest thing you can do is close the door, not because you are ashamed and not because you are hiding, but because something new is still being formed in you, and forming things do not survive well in crowded, noisy rooms. Think about how a seed grows. Nobody digs it up every few hours to check on its roots. It stays covered, in the dark, in the quiet, until it has grown strong enough to break through the surface on its own terms. You are at that exact stage right now. The victory is real. The seed has already been planted. But if you expose it too soon, if you let too many voices, too many opinions, too many well-meaning, but spiritually careless people crowd around what God has just done in your life, you risk disturbing the very thing that needs stillness in order to take root. This is not a message about isolation for the rest of your life. It is a message about this Sunday, this specific, sacred pause, this one day set apart, so that what you have won can settle deep into your spirit before the noise of the world tries to reshape it, question it, or shrink it down into something small enough for other people to feel comfortable with. Because that is what happens, is it not? You finally get the good news, the healing report, the job offer, the reconciliation, the financial breakthrough, the peace you have been praying for. And the very first instinct is to run and tell someone. But not everyone who hears good news rejoices with you the way you expect. Some will smile on the outside while something tightens on the inside. Some will ask questions dressed up as curiosity that are actually attempts to find a crack in your joy. Some will simply not have the capacity, in that moment, to celebrate something they have not yet received for themselves. None of that makes them bad people. It makes them human. But you, chosen one, you are not called to carry the weight of managing everyone else's reaction to your breakthrough, while that breakthrough is still fragile and new. You are called, at least for this one Sunday, to protect it. I want you to awaken to something today. There is a part of you that has been so focused on surviving the battle that you have not yet given yourself permission to believe you actually won it. Awareness is stirring in you right now. Even as you listen to these words, a quiet recognition that says, maybe, just maybe, this really is over. Maybe I do not have to keep fighting the same fight I have been fighting for months, for years even. Maybe I am allowed to rest now. Yes, you are allowed. In fact, you are commanded to rest, because rest is not a reward you earn after proving yourself worthy. Rest is the sign that you have finally understood the battle was never fully yours to carry alone in the first place. Throughout this message, I am going to take you into an ancient story, one that has echoed across thousands of years, about a man who wrestled through an entire night, completely alone, with no one beside him, and who walked away limping, but blessed and forever changed. His story is your story today. His night by the river is your Sunday. His wound is proof that the struggle was real, and his new name is the reminder that you do not walk out of a true victory the same person who walked into the fight. We are going to look at what happened at that river. We are going to understand what it means spiritually for your life right now. We are going to walk through the signs that tell you when it is time to withdraw and protect what God is doing in you. We are going to hear a story of someone very much like you, who learned this lesson the hard way. We are going to reach the emotional center of this message, where I remind you, without any doubt left standing, that you have never once been abandoned. We are going to stand on Scripture, because feelings rise and fall, but the Word of God does not move. We are going to pray together, the way friends pray when they trust each other completely. And we are going to end in a place of healing, so that by the time this message is finished, you will not just understand your victory, you will feel it settle into your bones. So breathe, chosen one. Let your shoulders drop just slightly from wherever they have been holding tension for far too long. You are safe right now. You are seen right now. And whatever this Sunday looks like for you, whether it is spent in a quiet room, on a slow walk, in a car with the radio off, or simply sitting still with your own thoughts for the first time in a long while, I want you to receive it as sacred, not empty, not lonely, sacred. You finally won. Now let us go together and understand exactly what that means. If something has moved in you during this opening, if something has shifted even slightly in the way you are holding your story, I want to invite you to press like on this message, not as a favor to this channel, but as a way of telling the next chosen one that this message is worth their time. Leave a word in the comments. Just a single word or sentence, and in doing so, you become part of a community of chosen ones who are speaking into the silence together, reminding each other that none of us arrived here by accident. If you know someone who has been quietly struggling, someone who is close to giving up on something sacred, share this with them today. That one act of sharing could be the lifeline they did not know how to ask for. And if you have not yet subscribed, consider doing so not as a platform action, but as a way of making sure the next message finds you without you having to go searching. There is also a donation link in the pinned comment below, and if you feel moved to leave something there, know that it goes toward keeping this light burning for the next person who needs it. Now, let us go deeper. Because what was briefly introduced in this opening, both the spiritual reality of this season and the science of the frequency you carry, deserves the full picture. And the full picture begins in the next section. To understand what is happening in your life right now, I want to take you back to a night that took place beside a small, quiet river called the Jabbok. It is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 32, and it centers on a man named Jacob, a man whose entire life up to that point had been marked by struggle, by running, by wrestling for position, for blessing, for a place that felt like it was always just out of reach. Jacob had spent years away from his homeland, working for his uncle Laban, building a family, building flocks and wealth. But underneath all of that external success, there was an old wound that had never healed. Years before, Jacob had deceived his father and taken the blessing and the birthright that belonged to his older brother, Esau. He had run from that decision, but he had never truly resolved it. Now, after 2 decades away, God was calling him to return home, and that meant Jacob had to face the one person he had wronged and never made peace with. Genesis chapter 32 verse 7 tells us that Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed when he heard that Esau was coming to meet him, along with 400 men. 400 men. Imagine the fear that must have gripped him in that moment. This was not an abstract, distant fear. This was the very real possibility that the past he thought he had escaped was now marching toward him with an army at its back. So Jacob did what any of us might do. He prepared. He sent gifts ahead. He divided his camp into 2 groups so that if one was attacked, the other might survive. He did everything within his human power to control the outcome. And then, the night before he was to face Esau, Jacob sent his wives, his children, and everything he owned across the river ahead of him. And Genesis chapter 32 verse 24 tells us something remarkable. It says, "And Jacob was left alone." Alone, not surrounded by advisors, not comforted by his family, not distracted by the noise of his household. Alone in the dark, beside a river, on the night before the most terrifying confrontation of his life. And it was in that aloneness that a man came and wrestled with him until daybreak. Scholars and theologians have discussed for centuries who exactly this man was, but the scripture itself makes it clear that this was no ordinary opponent. Later in the passage, Jacob himself declares that he has seen God face to face. This was a divine encounter, wrapped in the form of a wrestling match, taking place in the deepest hours of the night, when Jacob had nothing left to hide behind, no strategy left to lean on, no crowd to perform for. The wrestling continued for hours. Genesis tells us that when the man saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled. Think about that for a moment. Jacob was wounded in that struggle. Winning did not mean walking away unmarked. It meant walking away changed, carrying a permanent reminder of the night everything shifted. And still, even wounded, even exhausted from an entire night of struggle, Jacob would not let go. The man said to him, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." And Jacob answered with words that have echoed through generations of believers ever since. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." There it is, the heart of the entire encounter. Jacob was not fighting to win in the way we typically think of winning. He was not trying to defeat God. He was refusing to release his grip on the one encounter that could change the trajectory of his entire life. He understood, somewhere deep in his spirit, that this struggle was not simply an obstacle to survive. It was the very doorway to the blessing he had been chasing his whole life, through deception and striving and fear. So the man asked him, "What is your name?" And Jacob answered, Jacob, which in the original language carries the meaning of one who grasps the heel, a deceiver, a supplanter. It was a name that carried the weight of his old identity. Every scheme, every act of manipulation, every moment he had tried to seize blessing through his own cunning rather than receive it as a gift. And then came the moment that changes everything. The man said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Israel, a name that means one who struggles with God, or one who is strengthened by God, depending on how the ancient roots are understood. Either way, the meaning is unmistakable. This was not a name given to someone who avoided struggle. It was a name given to someone who went through the struggle honestly, wrestled until the breaking of day, and refused to let go until the blessing came. Jacob then asked the man his name, but the man did not answer directly. Instead, he blessed Jacob there, and Jacob named that place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been spared." As the sun rose over him, limping from his wound, Jacob crossed the river to finally face his brother Esau. And what happened next is one of the most beautiful reversals in all of Scripture. Esau, who was coming with 400 men, who Jacob feared would destroy him, instead ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, and wept. The very confrontation Jacob had dreaded for 20 years dissolved into reconciliation, because Jacob no longer arrived as the man who fled in fear. He arrived as Israel, a man who had already wrestled through the night and already received his blessing before the sun ever revealed his brother's face. Chosen one, do you see the pattern forming here? The victory did not happen in the date in front of Esau, in front of the watching world. The victory happened the night before in solitude beside a quiet river, where no one else was present to witness the struggle or claim credit for the outcome. By the time Jacob faced the crowd, the danger, the fear, the outcome had already been settled in private. This is exactly why the timing of your own life matters so much right now. Whatever you are walking into after this Sunday, whatever conversation, meeting, decision, or relationship awaits you in the days ahead, the outcome is not meant to be wrestled out in front of an audience. It is meant to be settled in the quiet place first, so that by the time you step into the daylight, you step in already blessed, already renamed, already changed. You finally won, chosen one. But like Jacob, your win happened somewhere hidden, somewhere private, somewhere the world did not get to watch. And that is exactly why this Sunday matters so much. Because the blessing is still fresh, the wound is still tender, the new name is still settling over your spirit. And what you do in these next hours will determine whether that blessing has room to root deeply, or whether it gets trampled too soon by voices that were never present for the struggle in the first place. What you just received in the first part of this message was not simply encouragement. It was a confirmation that the season you have been walking through, the losses, the separations, the inner reshaping that has left you feeling like a stranger in your own life, was never random suffering. It was the very process by which the chosen are distinguished from the merely religious, the deeply spiritual from the casually curious. And now that you know you are in that number, there is something else you need to understand about yourself. Something that science, of all things, has begun to catch up with. The ones who are chosen carry a different frequency. That is not a metaphor. That is not poetic language designed to make you feel special in a vague and uncommitted way. Researchers who study the human brain have identified specific electrical patterns that appear in people who operate at heightened levels of creativity, intuition, clarity, and what can only be described as divine receptivity. These patterns are called gamma waves. And the remarkable thing, the thing that should make you stop and pay attention, is that gamma waves are most consistently observed in two groups of people: children, whose minds have not yet been conditioned by the weight of the world, and what researchers describe as high-performing, deeply intuitive individuals, people who seem to be operating from a different level of access than those around them. In the language of this message, the chosen. But here is where it becomes deeply personal for you. Because while gamma activity represents the peak of mental and spiritual receptivity, there is a gateway frequency that must be activated first. It is called theta. Theta waves operate between 4 and 8 cycles per second, and they are the brainwave state associated with deep creativity, accelerated learning, spiritual openness, and the kind of stillness where you actually hear something beyond your own thoughts. Children live in theta almost constantly. It is why they learn so quickly, why they imagine so freely, why they have not yet learned to dismiss what the adult mind calls impossible. But as the years pass, as loss accumulates and pressure builds, and the world teaches you to be practical and guarded and realistic, theta becomes harder to access. The brain defaults to beta, the frequency of stress and survival, and the endless to-do list. And the chosen, whose entire purpose requires them to operate from a place of divine clarity and creative power, find themselves locked out of the very frequency they were designed to inhabit. This is not a spiritual failure. This is biology, and it is one of the most important things you will hear in this entire message. A neuroscientist by the name of Dr. James Rivers spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between brainwave states and human potential. His work carried him through partnerships with institutions including MIT and research frameworks connected to NASA, and what he discovered across those decades of study pointed to one central conclusion: the brain does not forget how to access theta and gamma states. It simply needs to be reminded, and the reminder does not require years of meditation practice or pharmaceutical intervention or any of the complex protocols that most people assume are necessary. What it requires is sound. Specific, precisely calibrated sound frequencies that guide the brain gently and naturally back into the state it was designed to inhabit. Dr. Rivers developed an audio sequence of 7 minutes, exactly 7 minutes, that uses a technology called brainwave entrainment. The brain has a natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic external stimuli. When you hear a sound vibrating at a specific frequency, your brainwaves begin to follow. They shift toward that frequency the way a compass shifts toward north. The audio that Dr. Rivers designed uses binaural beats and isochronic tones, precisely layered, to guide your brain from the scattered noise of everyday beta activity into the receptive depth of theta, and from theta upward into the peak clarity of gamma, in 7 minutes, without effort, without skill, without any prior experience with meditation or neuroscience or anything else. And why 7 minutes specifically? Because research showed that 7 minutes represents the optimal window for the brain to complete one full cycle of entrainment without triggering fatigue or resistance. Longer sessions can actually cause the brain to push back. Shorter sessions do not allow the shift to fully complete. 7 minutes is the precise threshold. And you noticed, perhaps, that in the first part of this message I spoke about the power of stillness and silence, about those moments of preparation that felt like nothing was happening, but were in fact the training ground for everything that was coming. The 7 minutes of the genius wave is that stillness, structured and supercharged. This is what it has done for people who carry a story that sounds like yours. A woman who had spent 14 months unable to sleep through the night, carrying grief after the collapse of a marriage she had believed was permanent, listened to this audio on a night when she had run out of words for God and out of strength for herself. She woke the following morning, having slept straight through for the first time in over a year. Within 2 weeks, doors in her professional life that had been closed for years began to open. She described it as her mind becoming quiet enough to finally hear what had been there all along. A man who had spent years feeling like his best thinking was trapped somewhere he could not reach, Like the clarity he knew was inside him was always just slightly beyond his grasp, began using the genius wave for 7 minutes each morning before anything else. Within 30 days, he had made decisions he had been avoiding for years, not because the decisions became easier, but because the noise around them cleared. He described it as finally being able to see the room he had been standing in all along. These are not extraordinary people. They are chosen people. People like you. People whose frequency simply needed to be restored. Now, I want to speak directly to something some of you are already thinking. $39 is not nothing. I know that. Especially in a season where resources have been tight, where the losses you have walked through have not only been emotional, but practical, financial, material. I understand that, and I want you to know that the hesitation you feel is legitimate. You are not wrong to count the cost. You are being wise. But I want you to count it fully. Because what we are talking about is not a supplement you take for 30 days and then wonder if it did anything. What we are talking about is 7 minutes, once a day, that begins to restore the frequency you were born with. The frequency that unlocks the creativity, the clarity, the intuitive receptivity that your assignment as a chosen one absolutely requires. The normal price of the Genius Wave is $49 for a limited window of time. Through the link that is pinned in the comments below this message, you can access it for $39. That is the only place that price exists. Not on any other website, not through any other channel. The link in the pinned comment is the single authorized access point. And if you go through that link and use the Genius Wave consistently for 90 days and you do not experience a meaningful shift, you receive every dollar back. Not a partial refund, not a credit, every dollar. The 90-day money-back guarantee is absolute and unconditional. You carry zero risk. The only risk is in not trying. I need to also warn you directly and clearly. There are counterfeit versions of this audio circulating. Files that use the name but are not the actual calibrated sequence that Dr. Rivers developed. Some of them contain frequencies that are simply neutral and do nothing. Others contain patterns that are actively disruptive to brainwave stability. The only way to ensure you are receiving the genuine, research-developed, precisely calibrated original is through the link in the pinned comment. That link and only that link. Do not search for it elsewhere. Do not accept a copy from someone who tells you they will send it to you for free. Free is not a blessing in this case. Free is a counterfeit. This offer at $39 will not remain open indefinitely. The number of units available at this price is genuinely limited, and when that threshold is reached, the price returns to $49 with no exceptions. I am not telling you this to create pressure where none exists. I am telling you because I have watched people come back to a message like this one and find that the door they were standing in front of is no longer the same door. Do not make that mistake with something this significant. The link is pinned. The price is $39. The guarantee is 90 days and absolute. The frequency of your mind, the very clarity and receptivity that your purpose requires, is waiting to be restored. And the chosen do not leave that kind of door standing unopened. Now let us step out of the ancient story and into the spiritual meaning that God is speaking directly over your life today, because every detail of Jacob's night by the river carries a message meant specifically for you. The first thing I want you to understand is that struggle and blessing are not opposites in the kingdom of God. We often think of them that way. We think if we are still wrestling, if we are still exhausted, if the fight has left marks on us, then something has gone wrong. Then perhaps we are outside of God's favor. But Jacob's story tells us the opposite is true. It was in the middle of the wrestling, not after it was avoided, that the blessing was released. The struggle was the very place where transformation happened. If you have felt like your life has one long wrestling match, if you have wondered why the road to your breakthrough had to be so difficult, so exhausting, so filled with nights where you felt like you were fighting alone in the dark, I want you to receive this truth today. The struggle was never a sign that God had abandoned you. The struggle was the doorway. It was the very place where your character was being reshaped, where your old identity was being stripped away, so that a new name, a new season, a new version of your life could finally be spoken over you. Notice also that Jacob was completely alone when this encounter happened. Everyone he loved, everyone who depended on him, had already crossed to the other side of the river. There was no audience. There was no one to perform for. There was no one to explain his fear to, no one to ask for advice, no one to lean on. It was just Jacob, the darkness, and the presence of God pressing in close enough to touch. This is what I believe God is saying to you through this story today. There are certain victories that can only be received in solitude. Not because God is trying to isolate you permanently, but because some blessings are too new, too tender, too holy to be handed out into a crowd before they have had a chance to settle into your own spirit first. If you rush to share what has just happened, before you yourself have fully processed it, before you have sat with it in silence long enough to let it become part of who you are, you risk letting other people's reactions shape the meaning of something that was meant to be shaped by God alone. Think about how often we do this. We receive an answer to prayer, and within minutes we are already typing it out to send to 5 different people, already rehearsing how we will explain it, already bracing for how others will respond. And in doing that, we hand over a piece of the sacred moment to people who were never present for the struggle that produced it. They did not sit with us in the dark. They did not feel the ache of the wrestling. And yet somehow we allow their raised eyebrow, their half-hearted congratulations, their subtle comparison to their own situation, to color how we feel about something God gave us in private. This is why the instruction for this Sunday is so important. Do not be around anyone, not because people are your enemy, but because this particular moment, this particular breakthrough, needs to be sealed in quiet before it is exposed to conversation. There is a beautiful truth hidden in the image of light breaking over the darkness at the very moment Jacob's struggle ended. Genesis tells us the sun rose upon him as he crossed over, after he had been given his new name. Light did not arrive to interrupt the struggle. Light arrived only after the struggle had done its complete work. This tells us something profound about timing. God does not always remove the darkness the moment we ask him to. Sometimes he allows the night to run its full course, because it is in that darkness that the deepest transformation takes place. And only once that work is finished does the dawn appear. If you are someone who has been waiting for light to break over a particular situation, a diagnosis, a relationship, a financial pressure, a decision you have been wrestling with for months, I want you to consider that perhaps the darkness has not lingered because God forgot you. Perhaps it has lingered because the wrestling was still doing its necessary work, reshaping your grip, reshaping your posture toward God, reshaping the name by which you will walk into your next season. And notice this detail too. Jacob was wounded in the struggle. His hip was wrenched, and he limped for the rest of his life. Winning did not mean walking away unscathed. It meant walking away marked, forever changed by the encounter. If you have scars from your own battle, seasons of grief, of fear, of exhaustion that left visible marks on your life, I want you to understand that those marks are not evidence that you lost something. They are evidence that you were present for a real encounter. Fake victories leave no mark because nothing real happened in them. Your wounds are proof of authenticity. They are proof that heaven itself met you in your struggle. There is also something deeply significant about the fact that Jacob had to ask for the blessing directly. I will not let you go unless you bless me. He did not passively wait for good things to happen to him. In the middle of exhaustion, in the middle of pain, he held on and made a clear declaration of what he needed from that encounter. This tells us that receiving your victory sometimes requires an active posture, not one of passive waiting, but one of holding firmly to what you know God has for you, even when your body and your emotions are telling you to let go. Perhaps this Sunday is your version of that holding on. Perhaps the quiet and the solitude are not meant for passive rest alone, but for an active, deliberate declaration over your own life. A moment where you say to God, I have come through the struggle, and now I will not let this moment pass without receiving fully what you have for me on the other side of it. And finally, consider the new name itself, Israel. Not merely a label, but an entirely new identity that replaced the old one. Jacob the deceiver became Israel, one who wrestles with God and prevails. Chosen one, whatever old name has followed you through your struggle, whatever identity was formed by fear, by past failure, by the wounds other people placed on you, that name is being retired right now. You are not walking out of this season as the same person who walked into it. The struggle reshaped you, and the name being spoken over you now is not defined by what you have survived, but by the truth that you have prevailed. This is the spiritual meaning behind everything you have been carrying. Your solitude this Sunday is not punishment. It is the sacred space where your new name is settling into place, where the wound from the struggle is being honored rather than hidden, and where the light that has finally broken over your life is being given the quiet it needs to shine without interruption. Now let us move from meaning into practical application, because understanding the spiritual truth is only the beginning. You need to know how to recognize the signs in your own life and how to apply this wisdom to the specific circumstances you are walking through right now. The first sign that you are in a Jacob at the river season is a strange, almost disorienting sense of quiet after a long period of intensity. If you have recently felt the fighting inside you settle, if the anxious thoughts that used to circle your mind every night have suddenly gone still, if you find yourself almost suspicious of how calm things feel after so much turbulence, that stillness is not a warning sign. It is the sign that the wrestling has ended and the blessing has been given. Many people mistake this calm for something being wrong because we grow so used to fighting that peace itself feels unfamiliar. But peace after a long struggle is not a trick. It is the fruit of your victory finally arriving. The second sign is the temptation to immediately explain yourself to others. If you notice a strong urge rising in you to call someone, to post something, to prove that things have changed, pause before you act on that urge. This is especially important for you if you have been carrying financial hardship. Perhaps a debt has finally been resolved, or an opportunity has opened after a long season of lack. The temptation will be to tell everyone immediately, partly out of joy and partly out of a need to be validated by their reaction. But I want you to consider holding this one close for a little longer. Let it settle in your own spirit first. Let gratitude take root in you privately before it becomes a performance for an audience. This does not mean you will never share it. It simply means the timing matters more than you realize. The third sign relates directly to grief. If you are someone who has lost a loved one, and you have recently felt an unexpected wave of peace where there used to only be sorrow, do not be alarmed by that peace, and do not feel guilty for it. Grief does not disappear all at once, but there are moments, sometimes very sudden ones, where the heaviness lifts slightly and something like hope begins to breathe again inside you. If that is happening to you now, treat it gently. Protect it. Do not immediately surround yourself with people who will pull you back into only the sorrow, however well-meaning they may be. Allow yourself this Sunday to sit with the strange, tender relief of a grief that is beginning, even slightly, to loosen its grip. The fourth sign is loneliness that feels different than it used to. Many of you have carried a painful kind of loneliness, the ache of feeling unseen, unchosen, forgotten in a season of unemployment or in a season of waiting for a life partner who has not yet appeared. I want to speak directly to you now. If today, this Sunday, the loneliness you feel has a slightly different texture than before, less like abandonment and more like a held breath, less like despair and more like anticipation, that is not coincidence. That is the sign that what you have been waiting for is closer than you think. And this specific pause is preparing you to receive it well, rather than desperately. The fifth sign is physical or emotional exhaustion that feels, strangely, like relief rather than defeat. Jacob walked away from his encounter limping, wounded, tired beyond measure, and yet he was blessed. If your body feels tired, in a way that is different from burnout, if it feels more like the tiredness after finishing something important rather than the tiredness of ongoing dread, pay attention to that difference. It often marks the difference between a struggle that is still unresolved and a struggle that has finally, quietly ended. Now let me speak practically about what it means to apply the wisdom of this Sunday to your actual day. It does not mean you must lock every door and refuse every phone call out of fear. It means being intentional. It means choosing, if you can, to spend at least part of today in genuine quiet, away from group settings, away from long conversations that pull your attention outward, away from voices that tend to question or minimize good news rather than nurture it. If you have people in your life who love you deeply and who would celebrate your victory in a way that strengthens rather than dilutes it, this is not a message telling you to cut them off. It is a message asking you to discern the difference between those who add to your peace and those who, even unintentionally, drain it. Choose wisely today. If solitude is what your spirit is asking for, honor that request, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if others expect you to show up the way you always have. For those of you facing financial hardship specifically, let today be a day where you resist the urge to make big, reactive decisions driven by relief or excitement. Let the peace settle first. Sound decisions are usually made from a place of quiet clarity, not from the emotional high of a recent breakthrough. Give yourself the gift of waiting just one more day before acting on any major financial choice connected to this season. For those of you healing after betrayal, let today be a day where you do not feel obligated to explain your healing to the very people who hurt you, or to anyone who might pressure you into forgiving on a timeline that is not your own. Healing after betrayal is not a performance for others to witness. It is a private restoration first, one that only later becomes visible in how you carry yourself. And for those of you waiting for a life partner, let today be a day where you release the pressure to search, to scroll, to force a connection into existence out of loneliness. Sit instead with the quiet possibility that what is coming may arrive in its own timing. The way Esau's reconciliation arrived only after Jacob's private encounter was fully finished. The order matters. The inward work happens first. The outward blessing follows. Chosen one, The practical application of everything you have learned today is simply this: protect the tender, newly formed thing that God has just done in you. Give it quiet, give it time, give it room to become fully yours before you let the world weigh in on it. This is not weakness, this is wisdom, and wisdom is often the quietest, least dramatic decision in the room. Something real just happened in you as you heard those words. I know it did, because I know the experience of being named after a long season of being unnamed. And what I want you to know is that what you just recognized in yourself is not small. It is not only personal. Right now, chosen ones all across the world are arriving at this same recognition at the same moment. People in different countries and different languages and different circumstances who are all feeling the same thing you are feeling, which is the sensation of being finally, accurately, completely seen. If that recognition is stirring something in you, I want to invite you to let this message travel further. When you press like, you are not doing something for this channel. You are sending this naming to the next person who needs to be seen. When you leave even a single word in the comments, you are marking that you were here, that you showed up for yourself today, and that act becomes a signal to every other chosen one who finds this message that they are not arriving alone. If someone comes to mind as you sit with this, someone who has been struggling to find stillness in a noisy season, share this with them. That is not a small thing. That is an act of love that could change the entire trajectory of their year. And if you feel moved to leave a blessing through the link in the pinned comment, know that what you pass forward will find someone who needs it more than either of us can see right now. Stay connected by subscribing, not as a platform action, but as choosing to remain in a community of chosen ones who are waking up together, one message at a time. Now I want to invite you to do one thing before we move forward. If you recognized yourself in what was just described, if you heard your own experience named in these words, if you felt the shift that happens when someone finally says the true thing about who you are and what you have been carrying, then type the word "ready" in the comments right now. Not because I need to see it, but because you need to say it. Because something in the act of declaring it, even in writing, even in a single word, begins to move something that has been waiting for exactly that declaration. Type "ready" if you know that what I just described is you, and that you are no longer willing to call your positioning a punishment. Let me tell you about a woman I will call Miriam, though that is not her real name, because her story is the kind of testimony that so many of you will recognize a piece of yourselves inside. Miriam had spent almost 3 years in what she described as the longest wrestling match of her life. It began with a diagnosis that turned her entire world sideways. What started as fatigue and unexplained pain eventually led to a series of tests, and then to a specialist, and then to a word she never expected to hear about her own body. The months that followed were filled with treatment, with waiting rooms, with nights where she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if her body was fighting for her or against her. During that season, Miriam also lost her job. The company she worked for went through a difficult restructuring, and though it had nothing to do with her illness, the timing made everything feel unbearable. She found herself unemployed, undergoing treatment, and increasingly isolated because so many of her friends did not know how to sit with someone whose situation was this heavy. Some drifted away, not out of cruelty, but out of their own discomfort with suffering they did not know how to fix. For a long time, Miriam prayed the way many of us pray in seasons like this, desperate, repetitive, sometimes angry, asking God the same questions night after night. Why is this happening? Why now? Why me? She described those months as feeling like she was wrestling with an invisible force in the dark, fighting for her life, fighting for her sense of self, fighting simply to believe that God had not forgotten the shape of her name. And then, slowly, something shifted. She could not point to a single dramatic moment. There was no lightning bolt, no audible voice. Instead, there was a Sunday, an ordinary Sunday, where she woke up and noticed, almost by accident, that the tightness in her chest that had lived there for months was gone. Not because her test results had changed yet. Not because her job situation had resolved. Simply because something inside her had settled. She told me later that her first instinct that morning was to call her sister and tell her everything felt different. But something stopped her. She described it as a quiet nudge, an inner sense that said, "Not yet, sit with this first." So instead of picking up the phone, she made a cup of tea, sat by her window, and stayed there in silence for almost 2 hours, simply noticing the strange, unfamiliar peace that had settled over her, like a blanket she had forgotten she owned. It was in that stillness that she finally allowed herself to cry, not out of grief this time, but out of something closer to relief. She told me it felt like laying down a weight she had been carrying for so long that she had forgotten what her own arms felt like without it. And in that solitude, without anyone else's reaction shaping the moment, she felt for the first time in years that she could actually trust what she was feeling. Not because someone else confirmed it for her, but because she had given herself the space to feel it fully on her own. 2 weeks later, her test results came back showing significant improvement, more than her doctors expected at that stage of treatment. Around the same time, an old colleague reached out about a position that fit her perfectly. A position she would never have found through searching, but one that came to her instead. She often reflects now that the peace arrived before the evidence did. The victory settled in her spirit before it showed up in her circumstances. And she believes, deeply, that the quiet Sunday she gave herself was the very thing that allowed her to receive it without letting fear or other people's doubt dilute it. She told me something else too, something I think about often. She said that if she had called her sister that morning, before sitting with the peace herself, the conversation likely would have turned toward worry, toward cautious optimism, dressed up as realism, toward questions like, "Are you sure? Do not get your hopes up. Let us dit fluffus up. Let us and see." None of that would have come from cruelty. It would have come from love. But love filtered through fear, the kind of fear that so often surrounds people who have watched someone they love suffer for a long time. And she believes that if she had let that fear shape the moment before she had claimed it fully for herself, she might have talked herself out of trusting what she felt. Instead, because she protected that Sunday, because she chose solitude over immediate explanation, she was able to walk into the following weeks anchored, steady, certain of what she had experienced, regardless of how anyone else responded to the news once she finally did share it. Chosen one, I tell you Miriam's story because I believe pieces of it belong to many of you listening right now. Perhaps it is not an illness, but a financial pressure that has finally begun to lift. Perhaps it is not unemployment, but a relationship wound that is finally beginning to heal. Perhaps it is loneliness that has, without explanation, begun to feel lighter than it did even a week ago. Whatever your version of Miriam's story looks like, the lesson remains the same. The peace that has come to you did not arrive by accident, and it deserves to be protected before it is explained. This Sunday, whatever quiet nudge you feel telling you to slow down, to sit with what you are feeling before you rush to share it, honor that nudge the way Miriam did. Let the tea grow cold beside you if it must. Let the phone stay silent for a few more hours. Let yourself simply be present with the victory God has already given you, before you hand any part of that experience over to the reactions of others. You finally won. And like Miriam, you are allowed to receive that win in stillness first, long before the rest of the world ever finds out. There is a moment I want to speak into now, and it is the moment that sits at the very center of everything we have walked through together. It is the moment where I need you to stop analyzing, stop reasoning, stop trying to figure out whether you deserve what has happened to you, and simply receive this truth into the deepest part of your spirit. God has never once abandoned you, not during the darkest night of your struggle, not during the years that felt wasted, not during the silence that stretched on so long you began to wonder if your prayers were reaching anywhere at all. He was there. He has always been there. And He is here with you now, in this very moment, as you sit with these words. Think back to Jacob beside that river. In the deepest part of the night, when he was alone, when everyone he loved had already crossed to the other side, when there was no one left to witness what was happening to him, it would have been easy for Jacob to believe he truly was alone. The darkness around him gave no evidence of anything holy taking place. And yet, in that very darkness, the presence of God was pressing so close that it took the form of a wrestling match. God did not wait for daylight to draw near to Jacob. He came in the middle of the night, in the middle of the fear, in the middle of the uncertainty, and He stayed until the blessing was given. This is who God is. He is not a distant observer who only shows up once the storm has passed. He is the one who enters the storm with you, who wrestles beside you through the hours when everything in you wants to give up, who stays present even when you cannot feel Him, even when the silence around you seems to suggest otherwise. I want you to consider how many times you have felt forgotten, and how, looking back now, you can trace the quiet, hidden ways God was working even then. The job that fell through that you thought was a closed door, and yet it protected you from a season that would have harmed you. The relationship that ended in heartbreak, and yet it made room for something you could not have received while you were still tangled in that old connection. The diagnosis that terrified, and yet it became the very thing that taught you how fragile and precious your own life truly is. None of that pain was wasted. None of those nights beside the river were wasted. Every single one of them was preparing you for the blessing you are receiving right now. Some of you have carried a particular kind of ache, the ache of feeling like your prayers were somehow less important than everyone else's, like the timeline of your breakthrough had been misplaced, forgotten in a drawer somewhere in heaven, while everyone around you seemed to receive their answers faster, easier, with less struggle. I want to gently correct that belief today. God does not measure your worth by the speed of your breakthrough. He measures the depth of the work He is doing in you. And some work simply requires more time, more wrestling, more nights beside the river, not because you are less loved, but because what He is building in you is being built to last. Consider this. If Jacob's struggle had ended quickly, if the man had released him after only a few minutes, would the blessing have carried the same weight? Would the new name have meant as much if it was not preceded by hours of holding on through exhaustion and pain? The length of your struggle is not evidence of God's absence. It is evidence of the depth of what He is forming in you, a depth that could not have been reached any faster than the pace at which it actually unfolded. I know some of you are carrying grief right now, the kind of grief that does not simply fade with time, the loss of someone whose absence still echoes through your daily life. I want to speak tenderly into that grief. God has not asked you to pretend the loss does not hurt. He has not asked you to rush past your sorrow in order to arrive at victory. He is present in the grief itself, wrestling alongside you through nights that feel unbearable, and the peace that is beginning to settle over you now, even amid sorrow, is proof that He has not left you to carry this alone. And to those of you who have felt overlooked, unchosen, the last one considered rather than the first, I want you to hear this clearly. The very fact that God chose to wrestle with Jacob, a deceiver, a man with a deeply flawed history, tells you something remarkable about how God chooses. He does not wait for you to become worthy before He draws close. He draws close in the middle of your unworthiness and transforms you through the closeness itself. You were never too broken, too late, too overlooked for this encounter. You were exactly the kind of person God has always drawn near to. This Sunday, as you sit in the quiet you have chosen to protect, I want you to feel the weight of this truth settle over you like warmth spreading through a cold room. You are not alone in this stillness. The same presence that wrestled with Jacob through the night is the same presence sitting with you now in your solitude, honoring the sacredness of what has just been given to you. Let every fear that whispers you have been forgotten fall silent now. Let every accusation that says your struggle was wasted lose its power completely. You finally won, and the God who walked with you through the entire struggle is the same God who is holding you now, in the quiet aftermath, making sure that what He has given you has every chance to take root before the noise of the world tries to reshape it. This is the emotional center of everything we have walked through together. Not a chapter, not a verse, not a technique for how to live better, but a presence that never left, a presence that stayed through the wrestling, a presence that is staying still right now in the sacred quiet of this Sunday you have chosen to protect. Chosen ones do not just receive what was promised to them. They carry it forward and multiply it into the lives of everyone their story touches. Every person in this community who is standing at this threshold is part of a movement that is larger than any single waiting season could contain. If what is moving in you right now is real, and I believe it is, press like on this message as your way of choosing to be part of what is being built. Not just for yourself, but for every chosen one who is still in the middle of their midnight hour and needs to know the ground is already shifting. Drop a word in the comments as a signal to every other chosen one, watching that they are not sitting in this recognition alone. Share this with the person in your life who is still in the thick of their waiting and who needs to hear that 3 things are already in motion, even when nothing is visible yet. Stay at this table by subscribing, because what comes next in this series belongs to you and you should not have to search for it. And if you feel moved to sow into the ground that carries this message forward, the pinned comment holds that opportunity, not as an obligation, but as the act of a chosen who understands that what they invest in the next person's breakthrough is never lost. Type the word receive in the comments if the 3 things I just described are already beginning to stir in your life. Not as a declaration, let us anchor everything we have felt so far in the unshakable ground of Scripture. Because feelings, however real, however powerful, rise and fall with our circumstances, but the Word of God remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. The first verse I want to place over you comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 32, verse 28, the very verse we have walked through in Jacob's story. It reads that the man said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed." This verse tells you that struggle itself is not evidence of failure. It is often the very path through which prevailing happens. If you have wrestled through something difficult, this verse reminds you that the wrestling and the winning were never opposites. They were part of the same holy process. The second verse comes from the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 22 and 23, which say that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is His faithfulness. This verse matters deeply for this Sunday, because it reminds you that whatever mercy carried you through your long night, that same mercy is fresh again this morning, renewed, waiting to meet you exactly where you are, without depletion, without exhaustion, without running out. The third verse I want to place over you, comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31, which says that those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. This is a verse for anyone who has grown tired of waiting, whether for a life partner, for employment, for healing, for restoration in a broken relationship. The waiting was never wasted. It was the very posture through which strength was being renewed in you, preparing you for exactly this moment of breakthrough. The fourth verse comes from Psalm chapter 30, verse 5, which tells us that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. This verse mirrors Jacob's story so closely it almost feels written specifically for this message. The entire struggle by the river took place at night, and it was only as morning broke that the full weight of the blessing was revealed. Whatever nights you have wept through, whatever darkness has felt endless, this verse promises that morning was always coming. And for many of you, that morning has already arrived, even if you are still adjusting to the light of it. The fifth verse I want to give you is from the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 17, which says that the Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by His love. He will exult over you with loud singing. I want you to sit with the phrase, He will quiet you by His love. This is exactly what is happening in your life this Sunday. God is not simply giving you information about your victory. He is quieting you with His love, settling you into a stillness that protects and preserves what He has just done. The sixth verse comes from the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 37, which declares that in all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Notice the phrasing carefully. It does not say we are conquerors in spite of all these things, avoiding the hard seasons altogether. It says we are more than conquerors through them, meaning the struggle itself becomes the very pathway through which conquering happens. Your struggle was not a detour away from victory. It was the road that led directly to it. The seventh and final verse I want to leave with you comes from the book of Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, which promises that He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. This verse speaks directly to the fragile, tender, newly forming thing that is happening in your life right now. The work is not finished simply because the struggle has ended. It is still being completed gently, carefully, in the quiet spaces like the one you are protecting this Sunday. God is not in a hurry to rush this process, and neither should you be. Take these 7 scriptures and let them settle over your spirit like a covering. Genesis reminding you that struggle and prevailing are woven together. Lamentations reminding you that mercy is renewed every morning without fail. Isaiah reminding you that waiting produces strength rather than weakness. Psalms reminding you that morning always follows the night, no matter how long the night felt. Zephaniah reminding you that God is quieting you with love rather than punishing you with silence. Romans reminding you that you are more than a conqueror precisely because of what you walked through, not in spite of it. And Philippians reminding you that the good work in you is still being finished gently and faithfully, exactly where you are. Let these words be more than information today. Let them be the ground beneath your feet, steady enough to hold the full weight of everything you are feeling in this sacred, solitary Sunday. Let us pray together now, chosen one, the way close friends pray, when there is nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. Father, I come to you today on behalf of the one reading these words, the one who has walked through a struggle that felt endless, a wrestling match that stretched through nights they thought would never end. I thank you, Father, that you were present through every single one of those nights, even in moments they could not feel you, even in silence that felt like abandonment but was never actually empty of your presence. Thank you for staying close, the way you stayed close to Jacob beside that quiet river, refusing to leave even when the struggle grew long and difficult. Lord, I ask now that you would settle a deep and unshakable peace over this person's spirit. Let them feel, in a way words alone cannot fully capture, that the victory they have received is real, that it is theirs, that it does not depend on anyone else's approval, understanding, or celebration in order to be valid. Let them trust what you have done in them, even before the rest of the world catches up to what they already know in their own heart. Father, for the one carrying financial hardship, I ask that you would give them wisdom in this season, patience to wait before making decisions out of relief or excitement, and a clear sense of provision that steadies their heart even while circumstances are still catching up to what you have already promised. Let them not measure your faithfulness only by their bank account, but by the deep and quiet assurance that you have never failed to provide for those who trust you. For the one waiting for a life partner, Lord, I ask that you would guard their heart from despair, from the false belief that being alone right now means being unloved or forgotten. Let this season of solitude be understood not as punishment, but as preparation, the very kind of preparation Jacob needed before he could walk across that river transformed. Let them trust your timing completely, even when it does not match their own expectations. For the one grieving the loss of someone they love, I ask, Father, that you would sit with them in that grief exactly as tenderly as you sat with Jacob in the darkness. Do not let them feel pressured to move past their sorrow faster than their heart can bear. Let any relief that comes be received as a gift, not as betrayal of the memory of the one they lost, but as evidence that healing and love can exist together, side by side, in the same tender heart. For the one who has felt overlooked, unseen, passed over again and again, while others seem to receive blessing more easily, I ask that you would remind them today that you do not choose based on visibility or status. You chose Jacob, flawed and undeserving by human standards, and you transformed him through your presence, rather than waiting for him to earn that presence first. Remind this person that they were never too small, too broken, too late to be chosen by you. Father, I ask that you would give this person the courage to protect their solitude today, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if others expect something different from them. Give them the wisdom to know which voices to let close and which voices to gently hold at a distance for just a little while longer. Let them trust that choosing quiet is not selfishness or fear, but wisdom. The same wisdom that allowed Jacob's blessing to fully settle before he ever had to explain it to another living soul. Lord, heal whatever wound this struggle left behind. Just as Jacob walked away limping, marked forever by his encounter with you, let any lasting mark from this season become a permanent reminder of your faithfulness rather than a permanent source of pain. Let every scar tell the story not of what was lost, but of what was overcome. And Father, give this person a new name today, the way you gave Jacob a new name at the break of dawn. Whatever old identity has followed them through years of struggle, whatever label fear or shame or past failure has placed over their life, let it fall away now. Let them rise from this season known differently, known as someone who has wrestled and prevailed, known as someone who did not let go until the blessing came. We thank you, Father, that this victory is already sealed, already settled, already theirs. We ask that you continue to guard it, protect it, and grow it in the quiet places until the day comes when it is ready to be seen fully by the world. Until then, keep them close, keep them covered, and keep them at peace. In your holy name we pray, amen. Now let us walk gently into the final movement of this message, the place where inner renewal, surrender, and trust begin to settle over everything we have discussed so far. There is a kind of healing that does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive with fireworks or sudden dramatic transformation. It arrives quietly, the way morning light slowly fills a room, first as the faintest change in the darkness, then gradually, steadily, until the whole space is illuminated without anyone quite noticing the exact moment it happened. This is the kind of healing that is happening in you right now, chosen one. As this Sunday unfolds around you, go back once more to that river where Jacob wrestled through the night. Notice that the healing did not come the moment the struggle ended. It came gradually, as the sun rose over him while he crossed to the other side. The wound in his hip did not disappear. He carried it for the rest of his life. But the healing was not about the absence of every mark from the struggle. It was about the presence of a new identity that gave new meaning to those marks, transforming them from evidence of defeat into evidence of an encounter with the living God. This is what spiritual healing actually looks like most of the time. It rarely means every trace of the struggle disappears completely. It means the struggle stops defining you. The limp remains, but it no longer tells the story of a man running from his past. It tells the story of a man who wrestled honestly and walked away blessed. Whatever marks your own struggle has left on you, whatever scars, whatever tender places still ache when pressed, I want you to consider today that healing is not about erasing those marks entirely. It is about allowing God to rewrite the story those marks tell. Surrender is the next piece of this healing, and I want to be honest with you about what surrender actually requires. It is not passive resignation. It is not simply giving up and hoping things work out. Jacob's surrender looked like holding on with everything he had, refusing to let go until the blessing came. True surrender to God often looks like this same active posture, not collapsing in defeat, but holding firmly to trust even while everything in your body wants to release your grip out of exhaustion. If you are in a season where surrender feels difficult, where trusting God with the outcome of your circumstances feels like more than you can manage today, I want you to know that this difficulty does not disqualify you from the blessing. Jacob was exhausted too. He was wounded too, and still he held on. Surrender does not require perfect peace in every moment. It requires a decision, renewed again and again if necessary, to keep holding on to God rather than releasing your grip out of fear or fatigue. There is also a gentle unwinding that needs to happen in you now, a release of the vigilance that has kept you alert and defensive for so long. When you have fought a long battle, your body and your spirit learn to stay braced, ready for the next blow, ready for disappointment, ready for the other shoe to drop. This bracing served you well during the struggle, but it is not meant to be a permanent posture. Part of the healing happening in you today is learning slowly, gently, that you are allowed to unclench, allowed to breathe fully again, allowed to trust that the fight that defined so much of your life has actually reached its end. This unwinding may not happen all at once. You may find yourself still bracing out of habit even after the danger has passed, the way a person who has lived through a long illness might still flinch at unexpected pain long after they have been declared healed. Be patient with yourself in this. The body and the spirit both need time to learn a new rhythm after living in survival mode for so long. Give yourself permission to relearn rest slowly, without shame, without rushing the process. Trust is the final piece of this healing, and it is perhaps the hardest piece to fully embrace. After a long struggle, trust can feel almost dangerous, like opening yourself up to disappointment all over again. But I want to remind you today that the same God who stayed with you through the entire wrestling match, who did not abandon you, even in your weakest, most fearful moments, is trustworthy with what comes next. He was faithful to bring you through the struggle. He will be faithful to guide you through whatever comes after it. Let this Sunday be the day where trust is renewed in you, not as a leap into uncertainty, but as a return to solid ground, the ground of a God who has proven himself faithful through every night you have ever wrestled through. Let the awakening happening in your spirit right now be gentle, be steady, be full of grace for however long this renewal takes. You are not the same person who entered this struggle. You have a new name now, one shaped not by what you survived, but by the truth that you prevailed. Carry that name gently into the days ahead. The Genius Wave Audio exists as a practical tool to support the restoration of the brain frequency that your assignment requires. 7 minutes in the morning. Precisely calibrated sound that works with your brain's natural architecture rather than against it. The theta and gamma frequencies that Dr. James Rivers spent 30 years mapping are the same frequencies that your divine assignment has always required you to operate in. And the audio provides a daily pathway back to them that requires no special skill, no prior meditation experience, and no more time than it takes to drink a cup of coffee. The link is in the pinned comment below. The price today through that link is $39, down from the standard $49, and it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee that removes every financial risk from the decision. If you have been feeling that your mind needs support to match the scale of what your spirit is being called to do, this is a practical and proven pathway to that support. The link is there. It will take you 2 minutes to access it, and the morning after you begin could be the first morning of a different kind of season. Now, before this message closes, I want to speak to you about this channel and the work we are choosing to continue doing here. This channel is no longer monetized. We want to keep making these videos because we believe with everything in us that these words are finding the right people at the right moments, and that the choosing ones who need this language deserve to have it available without a paywall between them and what God wants to speak to them through it. But making these videos requires time and resources and the sustained commitment of people who believe in the work. If this message has added something real to your life today, if the prayer we shared together landed somewhere true, if you are walking away from this video with a clearer sense of your assignment and a renewed readiness to finish what heaven started in you, then please consider supporting this channel through the donate link in the pinned comment or in the description below. We are grateful for every contribution, however small. We are grateful for every prayer offered on behalf of this work. And we are grateful for every share that carries this message to the next chosen one who is sitting in their own season of invisible preparation, wondering if anyone understands what they are carrying. If you cannot give financially right now, we understand completely, and we want you to know that your presence here matters deeply to us. Watch our other videos. Leave a comment below telling us what God spoke to you through this message today. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it before the week is out. These acts of generosity cost you nothing and mean more than you know to the continuation of this work and to the people on the other side of your share. Please like this video before you leave. That single act tells the platform that this message is worth showing to the next person who needs it, and it costs you nothing but a second of your time. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already done so, because the next word God gives us will come looking for you, and we want to make sure it finds you first. Click the notification bell so that when the next message arrives, you are among the first to receive it. Chosen one, as we come to the close of everything we have walked through together, I want you to hold on to the very center of this message. The truth that has been woven through every part of this journey. You finally won. Not a small, uncertain kind of winning, but a real, sealed, unshakable victory that was decided long before your circumstances fully caught up to reveal it. And this Sunday, this sacred, protected space you have chosen to honor is not a punishment or a withdrawal from life. It is the very place where that victory is being allowed to root deeply enough to last. We began this message beside a quiet river, watching a man named Jacob wrestle through an entire night, alone, wounded, exhausted, and yet unwilling to release his grip until the blessing came. We watched him receive a new name at the breaking of dawn, a name that replaced an old identity shaped by fear and deception, with a new identity shaped by struggle and triumph. We saw how that private, hidden encounter prepared him to face the very confrontation he had dreaded for 20 years, and how it transformed what could have been disaster into reconciliation and peace. We explored what this story means for your own life today, understanding that struggle and blessing are not opposites, that solitude is often the sacred space where transformation is protected rather than avoided, and that the wounds left behind by your own wrestling are proof of a real encounter with the presence of God, rather than evidence of failure. We looked at practical signs to help you recognize when it is time to protect what God is doing in you, weaving in the specific weight carried by those facing financial hardship, those healing after betrayal, those waiting for a partner, and those grieving loss. We heard the story of a woman who learned, through her own long struggle, that peace can arrive before circumstances change, and that protecting a fragile victory in silence often allows it to become unshakable by the time it is finally shared. We stood together at the emotional center of this message, affirming that you have never once been abandoned, not during your darkest nights, not during your longest seasons of waiting, not during moments when silence made it feel like your prayers were reaching nowhere at all. We anchored everything in Scripture, 7 promises spoken across thousands of years, each one confirming what your own spirit has already begun to sense. That morning always follows the night, that mercy is renewed without fail, and that the good work God began in you is still being gently completed. We prayed together, as friends pray, laying every specific need before the Father with honesty and trust, and we walked gently into healing, surrender, and renewed trust, understanding that this Sunday is not the end of your story, but a quiet, necessary chapter where everything that has just been given to you is allowed to settle fully into place. Before I close, I want to speak directly to whatever specific ache brought you to this message today. If it was financial hardship, know that provision is already on its way toward you, and this quiet season is teaching you to receive it with wisdom rather than desperation. If it was the ache of waiting for someone to share your life with, know that the timing you have felt so anxious about is being ordered by a God who has never once been late, even when it felt that way. If it was grief, know that the relief you may be beginning to feel is not a betrayal of your love, but the beginning of a healing that honors both your loss and your future. If it was the ache of feeling forgotten, overlooked, or unworthy, know today, without any doubt remaining, that you were chosen long before you ever proved yourself worthy of that choosing. If this message has spoken to something real in you today, I want to ask you gently to consider supporting this channel in a simple way. If these words brought you comfort, take a moment to like this video so that others walking through a similar wrestling match might also find their way to this message. If you have not yet subscribed, consider doing so now so that you do not miss the messages still to come, each one crafted with the same care and prayer that shaped this one. And if you know someone else who needs to hear that they finally won, someone who has been fighting quietly through their own long night, consider sharing this message with them today. Sometimes the very thing someone needs most is simply to know they are not fighting alone. As we close, I want to leave you with a blessing spoken over life, exactly as it stands right now. In whatever quiet room, whatever car, whatever corner of stillness you have found for yourself today, may the peace that settled over Jacob at the breaking of dawn settle fully over you now. May the new name given to him be echoed over your own life, a name shaped not by what you have survived, but by the truth that you have prevailed. May this Sunday be the sacred, protected space where your victory takes root so deeply that nothing and no one will ever be able to shake it loose again. May you walk forward from this day changed, marked perhaps, but blessed beyond measure, carrying a peace that no circumstance can fully explain, because it was given to you in the stillness, long before the world ever had a chance to weigh in. You finally won, chosen one. Rest in that truth today. Protect it gently, let it settle, and when the time is right, you will carry it forward, not as something fragile that needed to be hidden forever, but as something sacred that was simply given the quiet it deserved before stepping fully into the light. Go in peace, go in stillness, and go knowing, without any doubt left standing, that you were never once alone.